am so happy to bring to this event the voice and insights of Kate Solisti. Let me tell you a little bit about Kate before we begin. She is the president of Kinship Enterprises, and she has been dedicated to solving problems and nurturing animal-human understanding and wellness since 1992. Her passion and purpose are to give voice to all members of the animal kingdom so they can participate with human beings in improving their own health and well-being, as well as that of all species and the planet. And Kate's focus, thus, you can see, is a perfect fit with this event. As a facilitator of interspecies communication, Kate works with both wild animals and companion animals. She's a recognized expert in dog and cat care, behavior counseling, nutrition, flower essence therapy, and energy healing. She's the author of 6 books and has been featured nationally and internationally on stage, radio, and television. You can find her at katesolisti.com. And in the materials available with this event, you'll find ways to connect directly with Kate and her work. Welcome, Kate. I'm really happy to bring your insights into this gathering.
Thank you, Chara. It is so wonderful to be here with you and see you again. I love what you do and all the voices you share with the world and how much you give and your mission on Mother Earth. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of that.
Thank you. So, as I'm sure you're very aware of, since you focus so much on animals, oftentimes our conversations about what's going on planet Earth, what's going wrong, what needs to be healed, really focus on the human situation. And arguably, we need to be giving a lot more care to animals' needs and animals' contributions also. So, as I mentioned before we started, where I'd like to take our conversation today for our audience is to ask you to speak first on what are you hearing from animals right now about how they're perceiving the Earth situation and what their needs are. And then I'll ask you after that, what are some practices that people can be engaging in? People who would like to go that next level of connecting or caring or nurturing the animal kingdom. And then we'll see toward the end if you feel that there's an animal who would like to bring a message in. So again, first of all, what are you hearing from animals about their perspective on how things are going on this planet and what they would like to see happen?
It's a wonderful question and one that I am so grateful to bring their wisdom and what they've been sharing. I have been bringing through the voices and messages from the wild ones for quite a few years, and especially within the context of my membership community, which means that we meet every week, and normally it is a channeling or a message from one of the wild councils, is what I refer to, the Council of Dolphins or the Council of Whales or the Council of Bees. So sometimes my members will ask for a specific message because of something that's going on in the world that is affecting a specific species. So sometimes we'll zero in on that. But what I can say in general terms is that, first of all, the animals have tremendous compassion for us. They really recognize that we are struggling. But what our struggle is about is it is a birthing. It is a tension that is emerging because we are at a point of evolving into greater consciousness and awareness. And whenever there's growth and whenever this is really a birthing, there's struggle and some pain and some confusion and doubt and then lashing out at one another, all of that stuff they see as part of a natural evolution for us, a natural growth pattern. They are so compassionate and loving towards us. It is true that, you know, the native people, the First Nations and the indigenous people around the world talk about the animals as our older brothers and sisters. And the wisdom that comes through from these beings is full of encouragement and support and love, overwhelmingly. They, in our communications, the theme, if you will, is that each of us who are open to these communications, who are listening, who are eager to understand what other species and the earth and the plants and trees are feeling and are thinking, those of us who believe that and accept that are the leaders in this mission and this vision of a new reality for human beings. They also see us again as capable of great love and great compassion for each other. But they also say it has to begin here in each one of us as individuals. And so many of the meditations and the guidance they give has to do with us accessing our hearts, as well as our grounding to Mother Earth, that we have lost connection. We have created a separation that is an illusion. It's an illusion. We are not separate from the animals and the plants and the trees and the water and the rain and the fire and all of it. It is all a part of us as we are a part of it. And so we are all family members. We are all elements of divine energy in various forms, but it all comes back down to we are all connected. And the more we realize this, the more we really understand that what we do to ourselves, we do to the earth, and what we do to each other is reflected back into nature, is a critical understanding. And so what they see for us, if we can really get that, is the more we love ourselves, ground ourselves, remember that we're part of this greater unity of beings, the healthier we will be, both as individuals and as a species, which is really the critical piece. Because unless we, develop that love and awareness that we are all connected, we're going to continue to create separation that is going to continue to create wars and, all the mess. And one other piece to that is, and this is, I think, so relevant to the crisis that is happening in terms of climate change, warming, storms, cooling, heating, all of it, is that they have told us that as we evolve in our awareness and our consciousness, the solutions to those problems will be right there for us. They'll be completely available. We, as I think it was Einstein who said, we can't solve problems in the same mindset that created them. And their version of that is, we can't change what we're doing unless we find that love and connection in our hearts. That's where the change happens. That's when our awareness blossoms and we're able to access information that was not available to us in this mindset of separation and isolation and, duality and all of that stuff. So that is some of the general overreaching, if you will, or overarching message is that this is key, and they are here to love us and support us through that.
That's so humbling. I feel like we have to pause and just give attention to how humbling it is that they are still willing to support and guide us when so often we have treated them really terribly. And that in and of itself speaks to their wisdom and advanced level of consciousness.
Well, it's like, when they come through me, it's this sense of, we are often like toddlers, right? That we're yelling and screaming and fighting with each other and breaking things. And a wise and loving parent or older sibling doesn't hate us for it. They want to love us through it because they recognize that, the adding to that misery is not going to help anyone. And so that is, a way to see it, is that we are emerging toddlers and we do have these loving, benevolent beings around us who've risen above that.
Yeah. What do you have to say about the various ways of listening to animals? So you and other people have developed an ability to directly communicate with animals, and arguably more and more people need to learn those skills. Happily, you and others teach those skills. That's at the advanced level of listening to animals. For people who don't practice that kind of direct communication, listening to animals, and are not sure that they will, or maybe they're interested, what are other ways that we can be listening to animals, do you think?
Oh, that's good. Well, the first is to be quiet, right? The first is to be not only quiet, but still. We dash around, our minds are going a mile a minute. Any type of practice that encourages stillness of the body and the mind allows our heart to really communicate with us, allows our soul to shine through. One of the ways we stay distracted is by being very busy, both physically and mentally. And so one of the very simplest things to do is to find time to be quiet and still, and learn how, when thoughts and stuff are coming through your brain, just let it go through. Let them go through. Don't try to stop them or stuff them, because then they're just going to scream louder. But the more you can find time to connect to nature. Now, of course, it's lovely to be able to be in nature and take a walk, but you can do it by also tuning into some of these exquisite nature programs that are available on TV and YouTube and well, I don't know, podcasts, but exquisite work by the BBC. And, there's so many. And just sitting and watching nature do what nature does so exquisitely, and appreciate the amazing, absolute beauty of this planet. When I watch those programs, there's no question in my mind that paradise is here, that we live in the most exquisite paradise imaginable. We just have to remember that we're part of that. We never left the garden. We're still in it, but we must learn to love it and respect it again, and find our way back to listening. And so that's one way, is to get quiet and still, to pay attention. And if you have beloved animal companions in your home, just sit with them. Put the phone down, get away from the computer. One of the things about animal communication or any type of intuition is it's about being. It is not a doing activity. It's a being activity. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but it is about being still and being present, which animals are such great teachers of. Whether you're watching a bird at the bird feeder, whether you're, watching your dog play or your cat sleep, just being really present with them and feeling into that is a great first step. There's so many ways. Being conscious about the food you eat. What are you putting into your mouth? Where did it come from? Can you be grateful? Can you express gratitude for that food and these beautiful beings in our life? I'm sure you're going to have lots of other people talk about the importance of gratitude. But with animals, I just wrote about this at Thanksgiving time in my for my newsletter, my blog, and I said, of course we're grateful for our animals. We adore them, but do we take the time to express specific gratitude for something special that each one does or brings to our life? For example, my cat Flora, she adores me and she loves to be wherever I am. She doesn't meow, she chirps at me. So I chirp back and we carry on just a vocal thing. We're not actually saying anything, but it's an expression of love and it's an expression of attention and be with me. And so I love to just be with her, whether she's on my lap, whether she's lying in front of the fireplace, to just connect and tune into that sweetness, that complete relaxation. Animals can show us that all the time because they do it really well.
Yes.
Right? Our dogs and cats, conk out.
Yeah.
Just be with that, breathe with them. So those are some of my, suggestions that are so easy if you take the time to do it. It develops your ability to be present the more you practice it.
Yeah.
And then it develops your ability to listen on other levels.
Yes. I love that you started there because I sometimes think that some of our environmental activism is frantic and ungrounded, and it's not always coming from a place of wisdom. Sometimes it's reactive, or it's asking for a tweak rather than system change. And so I really appreciate your suggestion that, anybody who wants to contribute to the well-being of the planet and people and animals should have a stillness practice, a listening practice, and a practice of observing animals. We have foxes in my neighborhood who are just a constant delight to me. And because I get to see them at different times of day, I really do reflect on, what are they doing? How are they going about their day? Look how they weave themselves seamlessly into the local ecosystem, fulfilling a role, but they're not obtrusive. It's quite a meditation just to watch any animal that you can see, maybe on a nature program or just the bird outside your window or whatever is available to you. So thank you for bringing that in, because I think it is so easy for us to think, I have to take some kind of big action. And I think we do need to take big actions right now, for sure, but they need to come from that grounded place of stillness and wisdom and observing, learning from animal wisdom.
I think too, I was listening to a couple of, brilliant teachers. And I think what we have to remember is that we need to be for something as opposed to against, because that energy is an energy of conflict and struggle, right? But when you're for something, when you're for restoring an ecosystem, when you're for helping a species, when you're for this, whatever this is, there's a whole different energy. That's the energy of the heart. Is I believe in this. I love knowing that the sun bears are being freed from cages. So I am not against those people who are putting them in cages and going for their bear bile. I am for the beauty of this animal and its or his or her right to live free and have a happy life.
Thank you so much for mentioning that, because as you know, one of the goals of this event is to talk in and around this concept of new earth, which is really a concept about rising human consciousness, which you've already referred to. And I do so strongly agree with you that being against something, it's an energy of conflict and duality. It's actually quite a low vibration. It's almost even a war vibration. And anyone who's listening to Kate's and my conversation, please explore this for yourself. Please test out how you feel and what your motivations are when you're against something, and how you feel and what kinds of motivations and actions arise when you are for something. It's really, really important, I think, for the remainder of the 21st century that we practice this.
The beauty of that too is you can still sign petitions and give money and get involved and be an activist. But the shift that happens in you, your attitude about how you're doing it and why you're doing it in terms of something for as opposed to against, gives a whole different energy to how you participate. And that's what's so important, because when the animals speak to us, it's always about what they're for, you know, how they are, what their relationship is with other beings in their world. If they're a predator, what their relationship is with the prey. If they're a tree, what their relationship is with the insects and the mycelium underneath in the soil and the other plants around them. It's all about this beautiful interwoven relationships, all of them. That's how they see everything. They're not separate and alone. And although many animals are still individuals with individual consciousness, and there's some debate about that among humans, of course, but in my experience, I am able to tap into, again, what I refer to as the council, which is the higher group mind of, say, the sheep, or, you know, the antelope, or the zebra, or the elephants. But I can also connect with individual elephants and individual zebras to find out what's happening in their, you know, in their life right now. And that consciousness is key to recognize that all beings are sentient. This is, of course, again, a debate, but of course, that's humans saying, no, 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 we're special because we're the only ones that are. And I love that science is, and people, of course, like Jane Goodall and so many of these brilliant, more than scientists, they're really spokespeople for the animals as well, and for the need for us to care and connect.
Yes. I know you and I both love the work of Mark Beckoff. And so if anyone listening to this would like to see some of the current science on animal intelligence and animal emotion, the animal behaviorist ecologist Mark Beckoff, Bekoff, has written a number of books, as well as literally hundreds of scholarly papers, but he's written a number of books for a popular audience that are easily available that will let people see, oh, actually, there's quite a body of scientific evidence now about animal intelligence and emotion. And so, you know, anybody who thinks that we're still believing and kind of scientifically claiming animal limitation, that's really, somebody taught you that in the 20th century, you know, because in the last 20 to 40 years, there's just so much evidence building that animals have very sophisticated emotions, very sophisticated intelligence.
Absolutely. Many people have seen that wonderful program about the octopus who became the friend of the diver and how that changed his life. There are more and more programs like that available. And I just love that, because again, humans opening their heart to the possibility of this interspecies connection is just makes me so happy. I mean, I have been an animal communicator for almost 30 years, and the changes that I've seen, and the more, I don't know that my profession is mainstream yet, but the fact that more and more people and scientists, behaviorists, biologists are opening their hearts and minds to a greater spectrum of possibility that animals can have, and obviously, like Mark, do have, because he started as a very conservative scientist, and just being with animals and being open to the question, is there more here?
Yes.
Right? That just that little question of maybe, and that's what Jane Goodall did. Remember, she was not trained as a scientist, which again was her great strength. You know, in the 1960s, she was 18 years old or 20 or something, and she contacted Dr. Leakey, who was digging in the Olduvai Gorge, and said, I want to do something. I want to contribute? And he said, well, nobody's really studied chimps. Why don't you go and, be with the chimps, thinking she'd last a couple months. But what happened was she never had bought into, because she wasn't trained to look into chimps as just objects of study. And because, of course, the big sin in science was anthropomorphizing animals, which meant, of course, ascribing things like emotion, grieving, and joy, and all of these emotions that we have. If you think you see any of those, you're wrong. Don't bring it up. And of course, she did. She was like, I'm seeing these loving interactions. I'm seeing, this struggle, these power struggles. I'm seeing them use tools, which of course was the big breakthrough, because at that point, only humans use tools, according to our science.
And now we keep discovering more and more animals using tools.
Absolutely. So many birds and all kinds of creatures using tools. So it's good that these myths are being broken about what makes us so special and so superior. All of those things are being demythed, if you will, or debunked. And we are seeing much more of the animals who have always been doing these things and feeling these things and responding, singing for the joy of it. It used to be that birds just sing to find a mate or to, organize a territory. And no, there's plenty of birds who just sing for the joy of it, just to sing.
And also possibly to contribute to the thriving of the ecosystem, right? Because I know there was a study a number of years ago. I haven't followed up to see if more work has been done, but there was a study showing that it appeared that birdsong plays a role in the waking up process of plants in the spring.
Oh, and I love that.
So, if that's the case, birds might not only be singing for communication with mates or family members or flock members and for mating purposes and for pleasure, but also like tuning the orchestra of the ecosystem.
Oh, I love that phrase, tuning the orchestra of the ecosystem. Absolutely. What I have learned is that so many of the things they do have multiple reasons or results like that. That's a beautiful example that this bird, in singing for joy, is singing the flowers, singing to the flowers, singing to the plants to wake them up. The very act of singing from a place of joy has an effect on the plants. And so that gets us into, well, what is joy? I mean, joy in itself is a creative force. And if an animal or bird or fish or insect is doing something from joy, what does that mean for us in terms of how much do we need to find and restore joy in our lives? Because that has an effect on the ecosystem, right? Yes. I love that.
Right. And their reciprocity, that the way in which animals live, even as they're meeting their own survival needs, tends to contribute to the thriving of the system.
Absolutely.
And that is what we need to relearn is, well, I'm thinking right now of the words of Thomas Berry in his book, The Great Work, which was published in 1999, that we need to relearn or learn anew how to become a beneficial presence on the planet. And that, of course, means that our waste is fertilizing and composting the earth, and the ways that we attain our livelihoods are making a beneficial rather than a harmful contribution. And, amazingly, animals all around us are showing us how that's done.
Absolutely. I have a story to share that when I was bringing the seal council through, the seals were very conscious of our plastics in the ocean. They didn't necessarily call it plastic, but of course, when I communicate or receive information, I'm getting pictures as well. And so that's what it was, this stuff floating around in the ocean that's not natural. And what they said about it was fascinating. They said, everything in nature has a beginning, a middle, and an end, meaning it is born, it grows, it blossoms, and then it begins to decay and returns to the earth. That is the correct cycle of all life. However, because of our disconnection, humans, we have created this thing that doesn't complete that cycle. It's incomplete, this thing we call plastic. So it's created, it does its purpose, but then it stops. It doesn't break down. It doesn't go back to the earth. And so they were talking about the need for us to remember that everything should be part of the cycle. And they were confident that since we figured out parts 1, 2, and 3, we would figure out part 4, which is the dissolution, if you will, of that substance that we created, which gets us back to what I was mentioning in the beginning, which is as our awareness and our connection and our consciousness grows, we find solutions to problems that until we get there, we don't know how to solve. Yes. So there was one really interesting example that they believed, yeah, we got so far, but we need to complete that particular thing.
And we have attained that at a preliminary level, because there's quite a bit of research now identifying different types of bacteria that will break down plastic and ways to produce plastic out of other substances, different types of bioplastics that are biodegradable. So we seem to have the new information. We just now need to create the system change, which is probably true with almost everything on the planet right now, that enough people have attained the insights about the next level harmless approaches. Now we need to implement the whole system change.
Exactly. And I love Paul Stamets with the mushrooms and the mycelium, and his story about how the mushrooms break down oil, not only break it down where enzymes and bacteria were not able to, but in the plot where the oil was spread and the mushrooms grew, when they took the cover off of that oil puddle, there was all this growth of life. There were all these plants. There was, it was an amazing transformation that the mushrooms did. So maybe some of these, if not many, of the solutions are going to come from us going back to nature, who already knows how to solve some of these problems. Right. So,
and now we're back, I think, to humility and listening and observation. And, happily, in the STEM disciplines and engineering, biomimicry is really taking hold, as far as I can tell, because biomimicry is really where humility, listening, and observation meet up with technology. So for any listeners who aren't aware of biomimicry, there are lots of resources online that are showing how quite a number of people internationally are starting to design new products, substances, and systems that mimic the harmless and intertwined and effectively systematic way that nature does things.
Absolutely. And that's a brilliant thing that the listeners can, as they research and learn more about that, is supporting by however you can, whether it means buying products that are, obviously we can start with organic, right? But there are many sustainable, biodegradable products that you can buy instead of those that are, as the seal said, incomplete, that they're causing a problem. They're not breaking down and being part of the natural flow of things. So that's where each of us can make a difference as well, in how we use our dollars and how we choose to be conscious and aware of what we are purchasing and what we're using, and is it contributing or not.
Yes, indeed. One question I would like to ask you is, what have you observed happens for people when they start engaging more with listening to animals? And I guess I'm especially interested because I think you've been teaching for a while, as well as working directly with animals. I'm especially interested in whether you have advice for people who might start observing and trying to listen to animals and are probably going to encounter some frustration, because if you were not raised in an indigenous culture, but in an industrialized culture, then your brain is going to probably have some resistance to observing and listening to animals. And then if you do learn or hear something from them, you may not even believe yourself. So can you help people by giving them some signposts or advice? What's going to happen if they start trying this, and how do they keep going if they encounter roadblocks?
That's a great question. The first, and you hit right on it, is you're going to come up against what you've been taught, your quote unquote belief systems. And the first step is to just simply say, I am going to believe in this. I'm going to trust, I'm going to believe. And so when those voices from Aunt Harriet or your mom or your dad or somebody says it's just your imagination, you need to just say, okay, thank you, bye. That's not helping me right now. I need to go deeper. I need to feel in my heart what the truth is. So the more you practice stillness and quiet, the more you do tap into your heart. You're able to listen to your own inner knowing, your own intuition, which I believe is the voice of the soul. And so the more you practice that, the more you can trust it. The other piece to that is, if you get an idea that it doesn't matter, you don't analyze it and say, did I make that up, or where did it come from? Stop. Because what that's like is your intuition is like a little seed that you're nurturing that's coming up through the soil. And as it starts to come up and you go, oh, that must be my imagination, you're squishing it back down into the soil, right? But if you go, okay, I'm gonna do something with that. I'm gonna write about it. I'm just gonna write it down. I'm not gonna question it. I'm gonna write it down, or I'm gonna take an action. Then what you're doing is you're watering and fertilizing that little growing plant so that it becomes bigger and stronger. The more you act on it by, as I said, writing it down if you've gotten an impression, or if it's something that your animal actually transmits to you, like my foot hurts, you want to go check out that foot. That's an action that then will encourage what you're receiving because you've acted on it. So, but the first is to believe, yes, you can do this. We all have intuition. We were all born with it. It is a birthright. And for some of us, it does take time to develop, and others just need the permission, and off they are to the races. I've seen that in my classes, right? Yeah. But it's okay if it doesn't come so easily to you. I have a dear friend who's a brilliant animal communicator, natural horsemanship teacher. And she came to animal communication when she was a police officer, and a friend took her to a workshop. And, they were passing around a picture of a dog on a boat, and people were getting these impressions and feelings because, of course, when we get into a group, our energies support each other in opening and being in that place of acceptance. And so everybody was getting these amazing things, and she just looked at the picture and went, it's a dog on a boat. But there was something that stirred in her heart that said, there is something to this. I know it, and I've got to pursue it. And she had to work hard at it. Just like some people can sit down at the piano and play, and others have to practice. Well, it can be that way with the intuition because of those layers of what we've been taught, and what has, all those voices from our childhood that have said, this isn't real, it's your imagination. You just got to say, nope, I'm not buying that line. I'm going to believe. I'm going to trust that I have intuition, and that if I practice with it and I act on it and not deny it, it will grow.
Yeah. Two things that I was thinking about as you were saying that, and I think what you said is really helpful, is we're learning so much now about different parts of the brain and their functions. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping that helps us all to recognize. So there's a part of the brain that's more likely to engage in analytical judgment. Very important if you have to decide which mortgage loan is better, right? And then there are parts of the brain that are more intuitive, and that's kind of like a muscle to strengthen, as you're saying. I also want to highlight that you've talked about practicing this in groups. And I know for my own intuitive development, it has been really helpful, not only to explore on my own, but to be able to compare notes with other people. It's incredibly affirming. And so, anyone listening to this who would really like to develop more intuitive ability, or specifically maybe the ability to listen to animals or plants. We're going to have Dr. Jim Conroy and Bazia Alexander also speaking in this event about plant communication. But see if you can find a live or an online group where you can practice and learn with other people, because it really makes the difference when you see, oh, these are rational people whom I can respect for various reasons, and they think animals are talking to them. So maybe that's legitimate. And I'm sure that's one of the benefits of the fact that you offer a group setting for learning and listening.
It is absolutely true. And the more, there's been a lot of neuroscience around what happens in a group, and how the group intention and mindset and the group, desire for an outcome, how that absolutely affects each person in the group. And of course, the new physics is all about how that doesn't only affect that group of however many people, but it affects everything, everyone. So, so absolutely, there's an augmentation and a real enrichment and empowerment that takes place when like-hearted people come together. That is the beauty of group prayer and meditation, in many, many cultures, and of course in healing. So yeah, absolutely. The more you can be with other people who are on the path and believing, they're working to put that side of the brain aside and say, okay, I want to be open. I want to receive. I want to connect, is very powerful.
Yes, definitely. So I might ask you if you think that there is an animal or a community of wild ones who might want to bring a message forward for this gathering. And before we explore that, is there anything else that you want to offer today related to anything we've discussed or haven't yet discussed?
Oh, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think that everything we talked about is hopefully going to just encourage everyone who loves animals and nature and the earth to find that still place and to practice connecting, because that's where so much starts and so much develops from. So that's really, I think, a very important part of the message for today. But yes, let me see who might want to come through. Well, dolphins. Dolphins. Oh, so many people love dolphins, right? They are, as the biologists refer to, as charismatic megafauna. I just love that phrase. Just think it's fun to say. But what it means is that there's something very relatable about dolphins, as there are elephants and pandas, a little bit easier for humans to relate to than, say, a cockroach. So the dolphins come to us today with this message. Dear ones, the key to connection is simple. It's love and joy. The more you feel joy in your heart, the more you feel love for another, the more your heart opens. And when your heart opens, it enables your mind to be enriched and fed by this beautiful energy of inclusivity. For the mind can separate you from yourself and, of course, from others. But when you activate the energy and the wisdom of the heart, something happens. It changes how your voice comes through. It changes how your words touch people, the importance of sound. We, of course, work with sound all the time, and sound in the water and sound in the air is very different. But you have a vocalization that takes place in the medium of air. Use the energy of your heart to propel your words so that they can be received. They can be taken in and heard. Think carefully about what you say, for it has great power. But if you speak from your hearts, everything you do will have integrity. Everything you do will be touched with love. This is our message for you today.
Beautiful. That echoes and affirms so much of what the wisest humans have discovered and taught over time. And indeed, it seems like we humans have proven that the heart-based presence and actions tend to create really beautiful flourishing. And when our hearts are closed and not guiding us, we often end up with outcomes that turn out to not be what we desired. So it really makes sense that that's what the dolphins would offer to us.
Mm-hmm. Such happy beings.
Thank you so much, Kate. I really appreciate bringing the benefit of your years of experience into this gathering. And for anyone who would like to work directly with Kate or learn from her, you can take a look at her offer for this event. And once again, thank you so much, Kate, for being with us.
Oh, Chara, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's listening to this wonderful series that Chara is putting together, and for your open hearts and your desire to make a difference. That's what you're here for. That's what all of us are here at this time. We are here for a purpose. And I know that you're finding yours, you're expressing it, and all of us together are a great joy and are so deeply appreciated by our family of animals and plants, and of course, our Mother Earth. So thank you. Thank you, Chara, and thank you all.
Beautiful.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Access information, education, and videos on living from the heart in unity consciousness. Visit newearth1.com.